Hello, y'all. I'm Doug Robinson, one of the co-owners here at Eagle Eye Bookshop, and thank y'all for coming out on another good old hot August day. I appreciate it. A little bit of preliminaries, and we get that out of the way, and then we'll talk about our author. Um, while we don't require it, if you could wear a mask, that'd be good. If you don't have one, I have a pocket full of them, things like that. So if you could, that'd be nice. Um, we appreciate y'all coming out and supporting Eagle Eye Bookshop by buying the book from us. Um, that enables us to do more and more events, such as we're helping to sponsor Rick Bragg on October the 4th with the Gwinnett Library. And that will be a virtual event only because his publisher just wasn't feeling comfortable sending Rick out all around the country. So they would rather he do that virtually. So that will be with the Gwinnett Library, and you can find it on our website, a lot of information there, October the 4th. And then October the 2nd, which, well, wait a minute. Isn't the Decatur Book Festival coming up this coming week, next weekend? No. No, it's been moved to October the 2nd. And it's still under a lot of limitations, unfortunately. This year there will be, instead of 200 or 300 authors, it's 6 authors. And we'll be handling one of them at the Baptist Church in Decatur. And that will be on October the 2nd, a Saturday, starting about 10:30. The one author we're handling is the Emory professor, Dr. Carol Anderson, and her books, she's got a bunch of books out. What's the name of her new book? Is anybody?
Second.
Oh, it's called The Second, as in the amendment. And so that'll be October the 2nd. In 2022, the Decatur Book Festival hopes to get back to its total glory of everything, like everybody else is hoping. So it'll be just a one-day affair, and it's being done in conjunction with Decatur Arts Festival and Decatur Beer Festival and things like that, all going on at the same time on that weekend. And so it won't be there Labor Day weekend ever again. That's what I understand. I'm not moving it back there, leaving it in the first weekend of October, which is great with me. I've been wanting that for years and years. What else? Check out our website, eagleeyebooks.com. Our author today, Zachary Steele, he'll be signing his new book right up here at the podium. So y'all come up when you can after he does his talk. For you all that don't know, Zach is the author of The Weight of Ashes, which has just come out. He's also the author of Anointed, The Passion of Timmy Christ, CEO, and Flutter, an epic of mass distraction. And of course, he's been featured all over the place in all kinds of publications, from the AJC to Publishers Weekly to Shelf Awareness, and has had the honor to be interviewed by Lois Reitzes of NPR. In addition to the above, maybe he can talk about it more than I can, but his long-awaited fantasy series is on the verge of finding a home, and the first book will be The Falling Hero. So he says an announcement will be forthcoming. Zach also spends a lot of his time with the Broadleaf Writers organization, which he founded several years ago, which is dedicated to the craft of writing and establishing a community of writers in the area. Zach mostly grew up in Forsyth County, and for now he's living in Spartanburg, South Carolina, and we hope he'll get back here and live in the Atlanta area quite soon. So did I leave anything out?
I mean, I can offer you more great things to say. You can stop whenever you wish.
Okay, we don't have the time. So if you'd like to come up here and give us a talk, we'd appreciate it.
Hey, everybody. Kind of a surreal experience being in front of people again. I've spent the last year and a half staring at myself on a screen, hoping there was somebody on the other side listening. But I don't know when you laugh or when you groan or when you walk away, which probably happens more often than I will admit. First and foremost, thank you all for coming out. Thank you to Eagle Eye for hosting this event. Needless to say, I'm thrilled to be here finally to, after a number of delays, printing and otherwise, to get to this point. To have this particular book out in the world is it is a bit of piece of my heart, and so this moment is very special to me, and being able to share it with you all is equally special. Doug mentioned broadleaf, which I normally spend all of my time talking about. I'm going to spend this much time talking about. I do want to note that we do have some broadleaf people here. Benji, president of the board and lifelong friend and author of Impacted, a wonderful novel. Mary Ann Lozano, who's back here, and she is on the board and is co-chair of the conference committee. And I think that's our numbers for now. So thank you both, and thank you to everybody that has participated in Broadleaf, that is dedicated attendees and supporters that scream from every corner about what we do. It means the world to me. But like I said, I talk about that all the time. So today I'm going to talk about something else. And The Weight of Ashes is a story that I didn't ever intend to write. As Doug alluded to, you know, my work, I fantasy, kids stuff, worlds that don't at all mirror this world, because I live in it all the time and I like to escape it. I wrote the first page and a half just to get it out of my head, and it was something that it was vivid, and I needed to put it down, and had no real knowledge whether or not I was going to write anything else on it. Fortunately, that page and a half got the attention of my future publisher, who instructed me that if I would have the full manuscript, he would actually want to look at it. And nothing motivates a writer more to tell a story than to have somebody who can put it into print say, I would like to read that. And I would go, well, I will have to write that. And so, you know, writing it was an entirely different experience for me. And this particular topic of grief and loss and trying to find a path to healing was difficult. You know, I had my own experiences to draw from, and I tried to put them into the book. I tried to take every ounce of the pain and the grief and the suffering that I had experienced and put it into the lead character, Mark Murphy, in his journey. And for those of you who are not familiar, the story follows Mark, who has just lost his older brother, and he's unwilling to accept that death. And so he enlists the help of his friends to take his brother's ashes to the witch on Spook Hill to have him resurrected. And I mean, at its core, this story is entirely about pain and grief and how you go about trying to get through that. As far as little nuances in here, I'm open to questions for those of you who have them after I've done a reading. I don't want to talk about it too much for those of you who haven't read it, but there are characters in here that were extremely personal to me, including the antagonist. I wouldn't really call him a villain, but the antagonist of the story is named Gordon, and Gordon was named after a good friend of mine from my childhood in Florida. And he was my only friend because I was shy and awkward and did not make friends. Now I'm only awkward. I've gotten past the shy part, obviously. And I have quite a few more friends than I used to. But my experiences with him were profound. And when I was 17, he committed suicide. And I was very, very young, and I didn't know how to process it. So it became anger mostly. And I worked my way through it the best I could, having no frame of reference to process it, and was pretty sure I had gotten past it until I wrote this book. And though it was 30 years later, I realized there was a lot of unresolved grief there that that worked its way through. And I finally found a form of acceptance and not just getting past the grief, but truly understanding my friend in a way that I never understood him before. Though my Gordon was not nearly as troubled as this one, he was troubled. And he did lead me through some adventurous paths that I probably would have never gone on my own, which I'm grateful for, because it opened me up to new experiences, and it opened me up to risks, and taught me that though there's a line, sometimes you have to push it. So I want this story to stand for everything that friendship meant to me. And I hope that when you read it, you'll find your own connections, whether it's to the band of friends that you had when you were a kid, to the many pop culture references I put in here that made me very happy, or to just your own grief story and your own process of getting through it. So though I have a tendency to ramble, I'm going to stop there and read. I have a section that I'm going to read for you guys that is the second chapter. When I shifted, the pew creaked, reminding me of a door opening in a haunted house, slow and eerie. Still, it was more comforting than their silence, more comforting than the bleak organ music that filled the sanctuary. Any bit of sound otherwise was crying, mostly of which came from Tracy Stevens. Mascara streaked her face in shades of blue and black. Her cheeks were puffy, blonde hair blasted with hairspray and unlikely to ever move again. I don't know if Tracy was ever Mitch's girlfriend, but they were close, have been for years. Few of her friends formed a tight group around her while bawling away as if tears for breath. Maybe they knew Mitch, maybe Tracy's sobs got to them. But the commotion certainly made the other kids in the church stare forward as if there was nothing else to look at, blank as could be, like they were hit by a shoe and weren't sure how to react. From my pew a few rows from the back, it all looked like a show. Mama stood near the pulpit, unbalanced and fighting it, decorative white wooden box on a tall oak stand at her side. Mitch's ashes were in there, in a sealed bag. I hadn't looked at them, didn't need to. From the time she picked them up, Mama had kept the box close by, barely letting it down. Even at sleep, she'd set it centered on the dresser at the foot of her bed, where she could see it. Wet trails streaked her cheeks, bald hands tied around a wad of used tissues, shaking slightly. But she looked pretty. It had been a long while since I'd seen her in a dress. This one was black and almost to the floor. I think it was new. I couldn't remember seeing it before. To her side, Reverend Mills loomed, long face working that practiced, somber grin he probably learned in Reverend school. People usually bought into it, somehow felt better no matter what was ailing them. I just wanted him to go away. He'd been trying to talk to me about Mitch every time I was within earshot. Kept feeding Mama lines about heaven and Mitch being home with Jesus, buried in his ways he couldn't possibly understand. He didn't know what I knew. Mitch always said that was a problem with church folk. They're all just waiting in the line and they're not allowed to leave, just living to die. He told me to live, stay out of lines. There's more than one road home and more than one way to cheat death. You sure about this? I mean, how do you know? Reggie was always the first to speak. Not that she talked too much, just first, whether you wanted her to or not. I wanted to look at her, but couldn't bring myself to. I'd never seen her hair out of pigtails or not covered by a ball cap. It hung long over her shoulders like black silk, shiny and stark against her pale blue dress. Her grandma was a full-blooded Cherokee. Reggie got her dark eyes and tan skin. Despite that, the rosy shade of her cheeks flared like heat, eyes made up. It was stupid, I knew, but it felt like she was in costume, like she was someone else. She was Regina, a girl I'd never met that made me stupid nervous for some reason, not the friend I'd had since second grade. The friend I'd spend more alone time with anyone, no worry over boys and girls and sticky, gross feelings that made me sweat. Now my palms were slick no matter how much I rubbed them on the legs of my trousers. So I just listened and stared at a hymnal tucked in the back of the pew ahead. If I only heard her voice, it was still Reggie. Seen it, I said, voice barely above a whisper. She can do it. But how? Reggie dropped into quiet, fiddled with the fluffy hem of her dress. Mitch isn't, well, I mean, he's not. How could she even make that happen now? Dunk turned a bit her way, his wide frame rocking the entire pew, buttons threatening to pop free of his pinstripe dress shirt. Phoenix rises from the ashes. Why can't Mitch? Yeah, I know, but Reggie stopped short again, but she didn't need to finish. I knew what she would have said. She was always good at that kind of thing. Changed direction like a bird in flight. But I knew how she flew. Spook Hill's a long way. Has to be 6 miles or so. 4. Mitch said it takes about 3+ hours by foot since we have to cut through the woods. And if it's still raining, it'll stop. Their stares fell on me heavy. I could only look at Reggie for a flash. Something in the way she looked at me was different. Seemed to probe deeper, kind of like a look trying to be a hug. It was weird and I didn't like it. Dunk and Mo stayed silent, sitting just past her, waiting, smart enough to know she'd talk again before they could anyway. Saw it on the news. She didn't let up. She never let up. Spook Hill's big, Mark. How are we supposed to find her? Map. Mitch drew it. He's good with maps. For a second, Mo looked ready to say something. His thick lips opened and closed as he pushed his large glasses as high up as they went. Frames were as dark as his skin, sometimes nearly impossible to see. No words to offer, he pressed his suit, leaned back, and all but vanished behind Dunk. Not a hard thing to do when you're as small as he was. I knew it well. We were both short and scrawny and as easy to miss as a frog with no croaker. Thunder rattled the stained glass windows, giving the kaleidoscope Jesus behind the choir seats a good shake. Tracy squealed and wailed even louder. Another group of people passed through the vestibule and into the sanctuary, on a line down the aisle past us. I steadied my gaze on the cover of the hymnal, unwilling to make eye contact. I didn't want anyone else to offer me condolences that weren't necessary. I mean, we'll go, said Reggie, giving a good puff of a sigh for effect. Whatever you need. Dunk nodded in agreement, round cheeks hot pink and wobbling along. Mo had to lean forward for me to see him doing the same, though with that half smile of his that said he wasn't sold. Reggie noted Mama with a quick nod. She won't be happy with you. She'll be happier when I come back with Mitch. Reggie shifted a touch toward me, our elbows grazing, ready to lower her voice to say something practical I wouldn't want to hear, but a sharp yelp cut her off. Almost sheltered behind the pulpit, Mama cradled the white box, whispering something to Reverend Mills. Like a soldier on orders, he stepped into the aisle, hand out, palm to the shoulder of a small woman that clearly wanted nothing to do with him. If it had only been her screech in protest, I'd still have known it was Aunt Dawn. Her voice cracked when she screamed, which was often, as if she'd caught a cold that wouldn't quit. Behind her, Gordon backed off, a few easy steps at a time, head on a slow swivel, gave the impression he was checking to see who was watching. But I knew better. He was looking past everyone, looking for me. I'd never much cared for the way he stared at me, especially since the day at the ball field, like he was thinking of all the ways he could get back at me for ending his chances of playing professional ball. There in the commotion of the sanctuary, it gave my heart a skip, burning me from the inside out. I wanted to hurt him. I wanted Mitch's green Easton bat so I could finish the job right and crack open Gordon's head. But I couldn't. He had to be alive or none of it would matter. Cuts lined into Gordon's face and neck as if he'd gone to war with a feral cat. His left arm was in a sling, same as the one he wore 6 weeks after I cracked his shoulder blade in April. He'd only had it free for 3 weeks. He shouldn't have come. Neither of them should have. He was the reason we were there at all. Aunt Dawn made a wild attempt to force herself around the Reverend, who, to his credit, wrapped her up with his big long arms and swept her away. Another time, he said, calm as anything, as if this sort of thing happened all the time. With the exception of Tracy and Aunt Dawn, the entire sanctuary had fallen stone silent. But Tracy went to bawling louder, as though she just heard the news all over again, like this was about her. I need to see her. Let me go. Aunt Dawn landed a solid elbow to the Reverend's ribs, and he buckled down to a knee, struggling to find a breath as Aunt Dawn bowled him over to get to Mama. Morgan, please. Mama turned the white box away in a flash, climbed the 3 steps to the stage, and backed away, head shaking. I can't talk to you. Her voice dropped to a whimper behind a fresh wash of tears. I'd never seen it this way, and it drove my temper to boiling hot. Not right now. Mitch would have put a stop to it straight off, would have put himself between Mama and a grizzly, but I didn't move. I just sat there beside my friends, fists clenched, all four of us watching like it was the most intense episode of the Wonder Years we'd ever seen. Aunt Dawn kneeled at the base of the steps, repeated cries of please, drowned out by sobs. Mama had all but backed into the choir seats. The Reverend found his footing, at Aunt Dawn's side at a distance, trying to encourage her away. Gordon, on the other hand, worked his way up the aisle, away from Aunt Dawn's outbursts as if he hardly knew her. Taking his cue as an opportunity of their own, a few folks rose from the pews and filed out ahead of Gordon. He clipped Mrs. Wilkins' walker, and she made a fuss. Her teeth weren't in. Whatever she said was done and over in a hurry. Not that Gordon was listening. There was a moment when he stopped, hand flipped through his blonde hair, bloodshot blue eyes looking down on me, when I could have sworn he wasn't bothered by any of it. That he could have cared less what happened to Mitch, could have cared less who it hurt. Maybe I'd known him too long to think otherwise. Mitch always said Gordon carried his heart like it was a grenade. Let's talk. His voice was softer than normal, but still sharp to the point. Quieter version of his mother. Tried to think of all the things Mitch might say, but in a ruckus, I couldn't focus. Murph, let's go. He flinched, triggered by another volley of wails from Aunt Dawn. This place gives me the creeps. He does want to talk to you. Dunk stood, filling the aisle as fast as I'd ever seen him move. His thick arms bowed, fists balled, cheeks red hot. For a 13-year-old kid, Dunk was strong. He said it was from working so often at construction with his dad. Stuff it more, size. Nobody's asking. It's Sizemore, shot Reggie up as well. The smile on Gordon's face made me sick, as did the way he eyed her. Well, you are a pretty little Indian girl after all, aren't you? If you ever want to be a woman, go away. The hymnal flew in a flutter of pages, as much a shock to me as anyone. I didn't even realize I'd grabbed it. It collected Gordon's shoulder with a thud. He yelped, nearly drawing his arm free of the sling, only to yell louder as the pain from the shoulder blade kicked in. This is your fault, and you're going to pay for it. Once the worst of the pain subsided, he laughed, a slow and amused chuckle. I wanted to throw up. Did he think this was a joke? Pay? You think you're going to do, runt nuts? Mo moved to block his path, but was hardly a match. Gordon shoved into the pew with ease, raised the back of his free hand to strike Dunk clear. I was as far as he got. Aunt Dawn's palm found his cheek with a swipe of her left hand, turned his head in a quick snap. The pop was loud enough to silence the rain. Gordon locked onto me like I was the one who hit him. In the car, now. Aunt Dawn's voice emerged all breath, a growl that somehow filled the room. A red welt rose from ear to chin, but Gordon didn't reach for it. He barely reacted at all. Instead, he withdrew, back and clear until he dropped from sight. The fierceness in Aunt Dawn's face faded, skin washed pale, tears streaking rapid. She cast a final look at Mama, then briefed at me like I was supposed to come in for a hug. Then she turned and stormed out. As soon as the door shut behind her, the rain let its breath free and fell heavy once again. I wasn't ready before, I was now. The wrong person was in that oak box. Mitch deserved better, and I was going to make sure he got it. 9 tomorrow, I said to my friends, at the junkyard. We'll head to the mall from there. A nod passed from Reggie to Dunk to Mo. Then I worked my way free to tend to Mama. You may not have noticed, but I get a little country when I read that. All right. I guess if anybody has any questions, now is the time to ask. Dawn.
Yeah.
I mean, strange lady right there that I don't know.
So I read it obviously.
Yes.
But and you do a lot from personal experiences and characters and stuff. I was curious about the witch because I just love that kind of. I just love the witch and the concept. Was there any sort of legend or any sort of where did you come up with that idea?
The interesting thing is there's a lot of legends. Actually, where I finished high school in Forsyth County, there were some legends that.
Is there a Spook Hill too?
There's something that I don't even know if it's called Spook Hill, but there's something very similar to it, and there are some stories that have to do with ghosts that haunt certain roads and stuff like that. And there's one in particular that you guys are gonna have to help me. I see heads nodding. What the name of the road was with the tree. Okay, that's the one with the tree on the top of it. Okay, all right, and supposedly some people hung them. I don't know the whole story right now. They hung themselves. If you go to the bottom of the hill and put it in neutral, that your car will slowly pull back up the hill. And I did that. I did that with I think Jim and friends. Yes, and whether there's physics in play or actual spiritual influences, the card does seem to move backwards. It doesn't go all the way up the hill. I mean, that's ridiculous. But those stories are everywhere. You know, every place has those stories, especially smaller towns. And what's great about it, and one of the reasons why I chose the time frame that I did is because, you know, we didn't know, you know, where were we going to check this stuff? We're just kids, and we're going to go embrace this thing like it's life, and we're going to go try to experience it. So for me, The Witch and Spook Hill were very much that. They were a mythology that grew over time and had stories of people who, you know, who we have the group of people that will swear that it's a real thing, a group of people that will swear that it isn't. And what I wanted more than anything in this was for you to have to ask that question through the book. And I'm not going to say one way or the other. You know, you've read it, but yeah, that's it was not this particular story. It was just one that I probably exists somewhere, I'm sure.
For good examples of show don't tell, and Tracy's blue black mascara told me so much about the person that she was and the time that you're writing in, and so just that's fantastic. Little details like that. I mean, is that something that just is organic in you, or did you have to work for that?
Well, first, you don't even have to include questions if you don't. If you just want to praise me for things, that's fine. I don't mind. So the question was about show versus tell, which you know, I'm sure that I think I heard some groans. The writers will know what I'm talking about, but there's this idea that you have to be able to show details. Don't tell the reader anything. You want to show details to tell the reader about the character, to, you know, use actions and mannerisms and the way they make themselves up or whether it happens to be. It's so much better and richer and gives readers something to connect to rather than just telling them, well, this person is this way or this person was afraid. You know, you want to be able to show something that shows that they're afraid. I would say that, to answer your question about whether or not I had to work at it, yeah, I mean, for a long time. It comes way more naturally now when I'm writing, and probably because I've preached it for 6 years, and I feel like if I'm not going to learn it after preaching it for 6 years, nobody will. And so I've been very mindful of it when I write, and sometimes it doesn't come through in a first draft. It's more about going back and reading it and seeing where I can add the detail. But I'm very mindful of it.
Did you say that the page and a half got the eye of the publisher?
Mm-hmm.
Did that become the first page and a half in the book?
I am delighted to say that very little changed about the first page and a
Did
half.
we hear that?
Would you guys like to hear the first page and a half?
Yeah, sure.
I mean, we're here. You just want to hear me talk country just a little bit more. I'll talk about this page afterward. My cousin Gordon drove through the stop sign at 60 miles an hour. His 280Z must have looked like a shiny silver bullet chasing its headlights. Mama said the other car was a 66 Buick, built like a tank. I tried hard not to think about what my brother Mitch did in those last few seconds, but it happened anyway. Probably he didn't scream. Mitch didn't scare easy. The Buick hit the passenger side so hard it flipped the 280Z into a roll off Georgia Highway 9. Gordon was thrown free after his door broke off. He wound up in the grass beside the road with a cracked shoulder blade and only cuts and bruises otherwise. He wasn't wearing a seatbelt, and guess that saved his life. Mitch always fastened his belt, always followed the rules. He got on to me when I didn't. Older brothers are supposed to do that. Mitch died in a wreck on Tuesday. Mama didn't tell me about it till Wednesday. She held me out of school. It was the last week before summer break, so I kind of welcomed it. She took me to the old rickety church she pretends we go to regularly so she could tell me in front of Reverend Mills, a stranger. I didn't know what she wanted me to say, but I told her and the Reverend they were wrong. Mitch wasn't gone. Not for good, anyway. It started raining that morning while we were leaving the church. Thunder shook the ground. Mama said the angels were weeping. She stood by the car with her arms wide until she was wet to the bone. She said she wanted to be cleansed by their tears. Then she got in, strapped the seatbelt on, and cried while I stared out my window. There wasn't a Buick. Mama said there wasn't a need for anyone to see Mitch that way. She had him cremated. Reverend Mills encouraged Mama to hold a memorial at the church after the service on Friday. I didn't want to go, but I could hear Mitch telling me to do as she asked. My friends came to support me. I hadn't seen them since the accident. That was when I asked for their help. I don't know if they believed me then. I didn't need them to, I guess. I just needed them there. I couldn't make the plan work without them. Couldn't do it alone. Mama kept saying I needed to accept that Mitch was with Jesus, that he was gone. I needed to move on. I didn't want to. I wanted my brother back. This is your fault.
That was a gripping opening.
Yes, thank you.
Launched it right into it.
Yeah.
And that's actually based on, I will never forget, December 11th, 1987, being in an accident in a 280Z that went through a stop sign at that speed, onto Georgia Highway 9. Fortunate that my friends did not die, that I didn't die. I'm very fortunate about that part. And that we were only thrown 70 feet off the road. It wasn't an unserious accident. There was very serious injuries in it, but it's always been such a haunting thing for me. And right before I wrote this, I was thinking about that and realizing that like I was maybe like 0.3 of a second as a baseball fan, the amount of time a batter has to decide whether or not to swing from that car hitting square on the driver's side. And I was in the back seat, but leaning onto the side where the driver's side was on. And at the speeds, I was doing my little physics game, and at the speeds, seeing it flip that way, just that close. That's how precious life is. And I just had, I don't know, at that point, that's where that page was born. That's where that story began. And I had some vague images and a few scenes that I was writing to. And everything in between just became the adventure to get there. You regret this.
No. This is a good one. 'Cause I'm not
Okay.
a writer.
All right.
so-
Okay. Mr. Non-writer, sir. Yes.
I'm curious
You in the
now-
black chair.
Thank you. Oh, thank you. Hey, Matt. All right. Yeah. So, like the storyline, the layout, was it all just in your head, or did you have to like have, I don't know, separate notebooks and like plot this and plot that? And what was your process for putting all this together? Because like with all your references, musical, baseball, things like that, I was reading it and I was like, that's a lot to keep up with. Did that happen first? Was that episode before this? Was that, how do you keep up with all
I'm stricken by the Dumbledore line. Of course, it was in my head.
that?
Yes. Yes. Interesting thing is that, and Benji here knows that we've had laughs about the writing discussion of pantsing versus plotting. For those of you who don't know what that is, that's outlining, plotting, or pantsing, which is just writing it by the seat of your pants. I always have fun with that because I think I'm an instigator with that more than anything else. But I very firmly believe that whether you write anything down, you're outlining, because I had this 1.5 pages that was written. I had one scene toward the end of the book and one scene that became the end of the book. Didn't even know that was the end of the book at the time. And so I had these very vivid images in there, and I do outline. So I do write down the story, but once I have the basic framework, or in construction terms, I have the foundation and the framing, I just let it be what it's going to be. And I try to let the story guide me. I try not to get in the way, meaning I try not to dictate where it goes, because the story sounds so absurd to people who don't understand this, but the story knows where it needs to go. The characters need to know where they need to go. And I let it happen. And I find that stories develop more organically for me that way. As far as keeping up with things, I make copious notes, and I'm constantly checking them. And you still get confused from time to time, but that's what editing is for. So, but this one was far less daunting for me because the project that I'm working on otherwise is a series, and it's 5 books, possibly 6, and it's got this long arc that goes through it, and these little mini arcs that go through other books, and then the arcs that are inside the book, and then the characters it's all over the place. And I feel like I should be institutionalized most often because of that. But this one was actually refreshing. It was one book. I only had to remember the details within it.
So
So
you're saying that writers are mental?
Yes. I am most definitely saying that. No writer's going to disagree with you.
I'm interested, but, you know.
Jen, you had a question. What was your question? I wanted to answer.
Me?
Yeah, what was your question?
Oh, you answered it actually.
Oh, okay.
Did you write from experiences in your life?
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Did I write from experiences in my life? Yeah. There are a couple in here actually. Obviously, as I talked about Gordon, the accident, and the interesting one for me is I wrote from something in my life that didn't happen, and that I always wanted to have happen. It wasn't until I got to finish high school up in Forsyth County that I actually made multiple friends, one of whom is still here. And yes, I'm not going to cite him by name, you'll never know. But you know, I didn't know what it felt like. I mean, Mark is 13, so I didn't know what it felt like to grow up with a band of friends. And these three friends that he have, I like found family idea is always really important in a story. And I wanted him to already have his established family, whether he really realized how important it was or not. You know, hopefully that's part of his journey. But they're three people, Mark included, four people that all have this sense of isolation because they're different, because they have things that aren't normal as other people would see it. And so it's kind of like a lonely friends club. You know, it's if they don't have each other, they don't have anybody. And I knew what it felt like to not have anybody. I wanted to know what it felt like to have somebody. And so and that's a common theme. And anytime I'm writing about kids, that I want them to have their own bound family. That was the other thing that was most important. But the rest of it is just it's pop culture and fiction. Any other questions?
I have a sideline kind of thing.
Yeah.
Sorry, me again. Which came first? Was it like the emotion came first, or was it the storyline popped in your head first, or literally was it the soundtrack that came first? What initiated this for you?
I'm actually heavily influenced by music, and the soundtrack that Jim's referring to is like my compilation of music, which I created a soundtrack on Spotify. It's just the Weight of Ashes soundtrack. It has all of the music that I reference in there if you're, you know, wanting to relive the 80s, which who isn't? And the music always heavily influences the books that I write. There's always something. This one, there was one song that once I had this one first page and a half written, there was one song that kind of jumped out to me, and I had this scene, like I said, that becomes the end of the book, and it was Like a Prayer by Madonna, and it because I wanted to get my information correct, the time frame that I had put it in, like it had just released 3 weeks before this started, so it was like it was the it song, and so it worked really well, and so that actually gave birth to the whole thing. The emotion part of it, it's interesting because, like I said, I didn't really know I was still processing Gordon's death when I started writing this, and then about halfway through. For those of you who have pets and treat them like little children, you'll understand this. About halfway through writing this, my cat Maggie died of cancer. And there was like this 2-month period of just pain. And I couldn't write, obviously. I certainly didn't want to go back to this story at that point in time. So when I did go back to it, the second half of this book is just deeply steeped in everything that I was feeling at that point in time. And then, you know, I went back to the beginning and sort of wove that thread through there. So so yes, this is like music and emotion, and you will feel this isn't me boasting, it's just one of those things. Is like as you can tell, I still have trouble reading parts of it, and I mean, granted, it's very personal to me, but still. Yes, sir, you in the front.
Yes, if they buy a book, do they get a prize also to go with the book?
Well, that's a timely question,
Oh.
Mr. Doug Robinson. Yes, I have a wonderful PR team, and after a little bit of a conversation, she came up with this great idea, and I could not agree more. So if you buy a book, or if you brought one that you have bought, I have a special gift for you when I sign it. You will get your own pack of tissues. If you're going to use any of them as bookmarks, please make sure they have not been used first. And good luck.
I have a question.
Yes, we have a question.
Don asks, I really loved the Friends. Could you speak about the development of those characters?
Yes, Dawn, I can, and thank you for viewing. I hope your foot's doing okay. By the way, Dawn is not Aunt Dawn. Yeah, the Friends, I go back to that found family thing, and like I said, each one of the friends, there's something about them. Like Dunk is overweight, and he has to deal with that stigma. Mo is this slender, I mean, he has so many things that he has to deal with. He's this slender black kid who's effeminate and sings and does theater and loves Madonna, but is obviously, we know what his future is, but he doesn't even know it yet. And then we have Reggie, who is of Native American descent, and so she also has the skin color challenges, and she's a girl, who hangs out with boys, and she's a tomboy, so she has a lot of things she's dealing with, and her character I had a lot of fun with, because she's 13 and she's at that age where the tomboy and the woman she would become begins to start to blur a little bit, and being able to develop the friendships individually that she has with these boys, and also with a somewhat abusive and difficult father at home, helped define her a little bit. I'm very much a fan of creating depth to characters. I don't want to just write a character that doesn't have enough to make you emotionally connect with them, and whether that's something you've experienced or somebody you've known or something like that. It's just very important to me that they feel real to you, and real based on your own experiences. Last call for questions. Yes.
I have kind of a different track question. I do a lot of Audible. Do you ever do Audible? Do you record as the narrator, or?
Well, there's going to be an audiobook for this. The pandemic has made a lot of things difficult, not the least of which is getting people in spaces, where they need to work closely with other people, or having the skill to do it at home, which I do not have. And so it sort of got delayed until the paperback comes out. The publisher initially was looking for like performance people who could do this, and is very well connected with theater folks in New York and everything like that. And because things were kind of going, and I had started working on it myself, it almost happened that I was going to read it. I can honestly tell you I'm grateful it didn't, because there's so much that goes into that, and I have like about this much time available at the moment, and so I think it would be a fun thing to do. I don't see it being me in the end, but there will be an audiobook, and it will be somebody who is performance based. So. All right. Well, if that's all the questions, then we will get to the signing and tissues portion of the show. And most importantly, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for buying the book. If you haven't read it, I hope you enjoy it. If you have read it, or if you're going to read it, and do this for every author, please. Put a review on Amazon and Goodreads. And I know it feels like oh, I got to do this, and will I get my words right? You'll get them right if you connect with the book. But it means way more to the author and to the publisher's publicity and selling the book than you could possibly imagine. So whether it's me, or whether it's, think of the authors that you read, when you read a book, put a review out there, and if it's the 2 stars, 3 stars, 4 stars, doesn't matter. Get your review out there. They're very, very important. And also support independent bookstores, because we need them. These are pillars of our community, and this is where book sales happen, where people recommend, and I've lived it. This is where people recommend to readers the book titles. They're not just there to push buttons, not to say that places like B&N don't have book lovers, but having come from that world and then in this world, the passion is just way different here. And you come to an independent bookstore looking for recommendations. So support your indies. The end.
Hope you get a book signed, probably start right about in this area. And, we can all line up at the same time, or you can sit around while some of them are getting their books signed, whatever you want.